Okay, I'm putting a strange face because I don't know if we are live. Every time that I try it, it says that we are not live. And then I try again and refresh the thumbnails, and it says that maybe we're live. So,
Fingers crossed.
hi everyone, this is Abel. Welcome back to my channel. This is a specific show that I have put on because I enjoy having people and to be a host to speak about SFF literature because I don't know anyone else in my life who's even remotely interested in science fiction and fantasy books. And today I'm really proud because I have a gentleman and a scholar here who's also a streamer and I don't know if I can call you exactly a booktuber. Is
Podcaster, I think is
a
like more.
podcaster
Yeah.
who's Adrian M. Gibson with the mushroom in the name. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here, Bill.
It's a pleasure. It's a big pleasure. And we have been trying to do something like this for almost a year now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've been scheduling it for a while. It finally
And it is
happened.
absolutely my fault because I am the kind of interviewer who would prefer to have read
Mhm.
the opera, and I did a little bit of work. I did a little bit of homework, which is not homework, it's a pleasure because I've been reading Mushroom Blues, which is Adrian's science fiction book, a fungal universe book, which was weird the first time that I heard that definition, and it works because it's been a big success, right?
Yeah, man.
So
Much bigger than
um,
I'd expected at the beginning. Definitely.
really, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the doors were open for you because you have done such a good job and putting yourself out there. So we all knew who you were, and we're
Mhm.
pretty sure you're going to produce something respectable at least. But I would say this sounds
Not just
really
gonna
good.
release a dumpster fire of a story. But
It will be a little bit awkward being on the SFF, on the Fanfi Addict podcast after something absolutely horrible, but that's not the case. That's a really good
Thank you.
story. I am at around page 125, I think. So I have read quite a good chunk of it.
Mhm.
And just before we start discussing about the books and your future plans for the series, I want to show it off a little bit because that's a beauty. It's
Thanks, man.
actually a beauty. And one of the things we have discussed with Adrian in chats is that we do graphic designs both.
Yeah, I know the
So
interior of your book is really nice as well.
yeah, I have to say it looks really good.
Thank you.
I was chatting with another reader a couple of days ago, and they said to me, I opened your books. I cannot read it right now. I have to wait for a couple of weeks before I read it. But I was turning the pages, and it looks pure fire itself. I was so happy about it. But that's what I think about this one too. And just because we have to geek out about books and formats,
Mhm.
one thing that Adrian did is that many of you don't know is that on Amazon and KDP you have different formats. Okay, you can make your book really small or really big. You have just a limitation for the hardcovers for the amount of pages and a bigger limits for the paperback. What he did is that he did a paperback which is pretty small, but it is
Yeah.
slightly larger than the usual format. So many others they have around, I don't know how to count inches. So it's about
So
five
the paper
millimeters.
the paperback
Yeah,
is I mean there's different ones like Amazon and
yeah.
Ingram Spark,
Okay.
which are the two like printers and distributors.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, it should be essentially like 8 inches
yeah.
tall and 5.25 wide. I
Exactly.
think I think Amazon is like a tiny bit smaller, and Ingram Spark is like a tiny bit bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. What I said is this one.
Yeah,
This
yeah, the
popped
width.
out, which is slightly larger, and I was watching it and reading it, and I said, I'm gonna copy that. And that's exactly what I did for mine, because you know, that small amount on the sides, it makes it easier to read because you have more space and you can put
Yep.
more on a single line. It sounds stupid. It is not. Try to see the difference for yourself. That's a
But
really small
these are like the
decision.
super nerdy
Yeah,
design decisions
absolutely.
that I went through. I went through like my entire library and
Uh-huh.
was thinking like, which size of book do I like the best,
Uh-huh.
and why, like for hardcover or for paperback, and
Yeah.
just compared all the different sizes that I
Mhm.
have. And yeah, I just landed on this sweet spot because it's like if I can get like even like a quarter of an inch more on the
Yeah.
width, then that gives me more breathing room when it comes to the page design and like
Yeah.
the like you said, like the amount of words that I can fit on each page.
Exactly.
And so it's just honestly like I went through everything when it came to this book, like absolutely everything, to the point where it's like,
I can tell that the amount of research and work that
yeah,
it's been.
like I've
Mm,
got a map that I
yeah,
drew and designed
yeah, yeah,
myself. I've
yeah,
got a full glossary of in universe, like, well, there's like mycological
yeah.
terminology, but there's also
Also, the religion.
in universe like religion and language
Yeah,
stuff. So
this is top notch, guys. So I prefer reading paperbacks, but I know that usually Tradpub or indie, it's not, there's no difference usually, but they're really cheap. The production and the design,
mhm.
they're really minimal. They do the
But that
bare minimum to push it out.
right,
Okay.
and that's a benefit of, I mean, when it comes to traditionally published
Hmm.
books, there is a certain degree to which like every publisher is going to view every author as a return on investment, and so
Yeah, absolutely.
they're going to figure out how much they can squeeze into a single book
Mhm.
and how they can reduce page count as much as possible.
Exactly.
Which is why like when you get big chunky books like Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archives, the
Mhm.
paper quality is downgraded because of
Yeah, yeah,
printing capabilities, the fact that the book is
yeah.
so long,
But also
and
logically,
how
that it can't stand that much
exactly.
of weight. Okay, it
Yep,
doesn't
yep.
stand on
The
itself.
binding would just fall
Yeah,
apart
you
if
crack.
it was any
Absolutely.
thicker. But with
Yeah.
paperback and or sorry with indie publishing, it's like you can look at your paperbacks, you can look at your hardcovers, and be much more thoughtful about it, and less concerned with page count
Hmm.
and more concerned with presentation and just the overall quality of the product. And for me as like a graphic designer and artist, going into it, like every single book I do, even the ones I'm working on now,
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking about how do I design this to make it like as unique of an experience as possible and something that is visually beautiful. And then on top of that, it's like I have two friends in Sweden who made a full soundtrack for this book. So
That's
you
incredible.
can go to the very back of the book and there's like a
Yeah,
QR code
yeah,
that
yeah.
you can
I've
scan.
seen
You can
that.
listen to a Spotify playlist or you can download
Mhm.
the album. And for me, it's like giving readers a more multi-sensorial experience is for me like way more satisfying, and a lot of readers
It's a
have really
better
appreciated it.
reading experience if
Yeah.
if you prefer ebooks, and there's an argument to be done about the quality of ebooks too, the
Yeah.
formatting inside. You can have really minimal or really bad, but that's another all kind of worms. Okay. But if you prefer paperbacks or hardcovers, and this kind of I'm sorry, this kind of products, it's really rare. I have seen very big names in the industry, people that are basically living producing hardcovers and paperbacks and being
Hmm.
in the published. Mm-mm. They don't have this kind of quality. And of course, a few of them I've seen that they've been doing better and better.
Yeah.
I don't want to do names because
No,
that's not.
I have
That's,
close friends, and I give
but
them shit. I give them shit behind
yeah,
the
no,
scenes,
absolutely. Yeah.
and
And that's
I'll
why
tell them
I
like,
try to help the more that I
yeah,
can.
yeah,
I
yeah.
have been
That's
offered to
exactly it.
people to help them doing the. I redid, for example, this one. I offered Noah
Oh,
to
nice.
really do the typography
Yep.
because the artwork was really good, was effective, but the
Hmm.
typography it was not effective. It wasn't bad,
Can
but
I
it
ask you
wasn't
something? Because I
top
feel like you're
notch.
very similar to me. I've had friends who've shown me like what they're working on and everything like that,
Yeah.
and they'll show me the cover, and I'll
Mhm.
just like in like part of my soul just like dies a little bit. And the only thing I can tell them is like, can you let me take a crack at this? And if I come back with a better version, then you can use
Yeah,
it for free, because like
absolutely.
I
Yeah, yeah,
cannot abide bad
yeah.
covers coming from my friends' books, because it's just,
Especially if,
to
if we
me
have
to
a
me
personal connection, it's
yeah, yeah,
painful.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
really
because it's like
painful.
it's so
Yeah,
painful. Oh, I
yeah, yeah,
cannot
yeah.
stand it. So I'm just like, let me
Same
help you,
happened with
please.
Chance Dillion with for
Yeah, yeah.
the Mercy Tears of the Fallen.
Hmm.
I did just the typography, and then I helped him doing the spine because he
Yep.
didn't have the paperback, the spine in the back, and then the interior design and the ebook. It was a long process because that's a chunky book,
Hmm.
but it was so satisfying because
Yeah.
those arcs, I
Yeah.
tell myself they look so good, and
That's
they've been
exactly it.
produced. Yeah, 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 yeah,
There's
and
there's like such a satisfaction in being able to help out a friend
yeah.
and know that like when they put their book out there, that it's not
Mhm.
like, it pains me when I have friends and they're
Yeah.
just like, oh, I formatted this in Microsoft Word, and I'm just like, oh God. Oh.
In a way, it's painful, not just because we have a personal connection with them, and we would love for them to have a
The
top
best possible
notch,
product.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, but also because in general the industry it suffers if we have a the more bad produced paperbacks,
Yep.
hardcovers, and ebooks we have, the worse the industry becomes, the whole environment for us. So
It's not necessarily the worse the industry becomes. I think it's more the perception of the industry.
yeah,
And when
exactly.
it
Yeah,
comes to
yeah, yeah.
self-publishing, there's a
Mhm.
long history of, especially since, the Wild West days of like the early 2010s,
Exactly.
when KDP and all these like ebooks and Kindle and all that stuff was just starting, like really,
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
starting to flourish. And you had authors like Hugh Howey and who's the author of The Martian, Andy Weir,
Exactly.
like friends of mine like Ben
Hugh
Galley,
Howey. Yeah,
who
all
were
that.
just like real early on kind of thing.
Mhm.
Since those days, there's kind of a misconception of standards in indie
Mhm.
publishing, and just because some people have seen some bad covers, there, of course, like you go on Amazon and there are just disastrous covers, and some which surprisingly sell thousands of copies, which boggles my
I
mind
know.
still to this day. But there's this misconception, or just kind of like, I would say, a blanket
Mhm.
application of opinion about like all indie books are like this. If
Yeah.
like this select handful of indie books really just did not impress me and was really bad art, really bad design, you maybe got a physical book or an ebook and it was badly formatted,
Yeah. Yeah.
that just kind of it poisons the well essentially for the rest of the indie authors out there. And so for me, it's kind of like, if every indie book that gets put out, if every indie book that I put out, if every indie book that my friends put out and I help them with it, that is one more book to add to the growing level of quality of indie books. And we're in a really good time right now where there are an exceptional amount of quality freelance book designers, cover artists, and people who are just able to become a part of the process that authors can hire to make their book stand out beyond anything that was being done 10 years ago. And honestly, like, beyond what traditional publishers are putting out, because traditional publishers are looking at cost saving measures, whereas indie publishers are looking at deeply personal passion projects that
Exactly.
they're
Mhm.
willing to invest in. And I think that passion is starting to show through more and more.
Yeah, and I think that in the context of someone who, I mean, when you decide to be a self-publisher, you do it. Um, I like to think that most of the people that decide to be self-publisher, they do it because they want to retain a certain degrees of control on what
Yep.
they produce, what they put out. And I get it. It can be expensive. Illustrations are expensive. Typography is expensive. Internal design is expensive. But in the long run, those are all things that should matter
Yep.
when you're going through the pre-production of the books. If you cannot save enough money to have a good internal design and a good typography and a good cover, someone is going to think you didn't spend the money for the editing and the proofreadings. So it's a all overall concept that encompasses many things inside the
Yeah.
production of a book. So yeah, you you do the best if you're self-publishing. You do the best that you can do,
Yeah.
but
And
the result
honestly,
will be
yeah,
mm,
the result will be what you decide it will be. And
yeah,
ultimately, like, I think a lot of people just, you know, they might not have the visual art background, they might not have the design background,
yeah, mhm,
what have you. And so I think every author has different standards, right?
absolutely.
And so for a lot of authors, like a book that I don't think is well designed, or like a cover that's not well done or well designed, for that author it might have been like beyond their
It's okay.
expectations,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So every author has different standards, and I think
Mhm.
from my perspective, the best that we can do is kind of put out the best possible representations of our skill level and our tastes, and hopefully that will continue to cause this kind of ripple effect of influence, where it's like more people see more well-designed books, and therefore have uh, they are they are developing a higher and higher personal standard that they can
Yeah.
then apply to their own books in the future. So it's
And
kind
that
of like,
happens for the readers too, I think,
yeah, yeah,
because you can think, well, readers won't care. They're going to read it anyway. If the story is good, it is good, and I
hmm
cannot argue with the about the story being good or not, or well written or not. And you may have a large portion of readers being absolutely uninterested on the aesthetics
hmm
of the books. But I think that the vast majority, they know what they like and what they don't like, even if
hmm
they don't cannot explain exactly the mechanics of what's going on a cover, on the internal design. I want to say even the choice of the font
yeah.
that you use for the internals of the
I
book.
was very specific about using. There's a font called Adobe Garamond,
Uh-huh.
which is a font that is generally used in thrillers and mystery novels.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
so, from like an aesthetic perspective, the way it reads, different
Mhm.
fonts have different degrees of
Exactly. Exactly.
legibility. And so, for me, it's really cool to be able to like look at all the thriller books that I have and all the mystery books, and kind of think like, holy crap, the font type adds to the atmosphere of the book, which is
Exactly.
just like is
Exactly.
beyond wild. And so obviously fantasy books and science fiction books have different type font types.
Mhm.
So for me, because so much of the book is like centered around murder mystery, police procedural, I was like, okay, I want to kind of
That
be
kind of
conscious
vibe. Yeah.
about that vibe and about what the font is conveying about the story itself. And so I went with Adobe Garamond for that specific reason. So it's like so much of this stuff is intentional. And honestly, if you have a book collection, look through the books and think like, what is the kind of
Exactly.
book that I'm putting
Mhm.
out, and what do I have on my shelf that is comparable? And then start comparing, like think like, how would this font present my book? The size of the font, the size of the book itself.
The
How big do I want it
spacing,
to be
the
in paperback?
margins, it's everything really,
Everything. Yeah.
really, really important. And it has to be deliberate. And even
Yeah.
if you cannot do it for yourself because that's
There are
not your
people that you
job,
can hire. Yeah.
when you're going to hire and you're going to pay, if you have a little bit of knowledge about that, it will help you understand if you're spending your money wisely or not.
hmm
So I think that authors will become more and more educated about that, and
Yeah.
more deliberate when they do this kind of choices. And the result will be a better environment
hmm
for readers and
Yeah.
writers and all the rest.
And
So
honestly, like my goal with this book, like you don't have the hardcover, you have the paperback.
yeah,
But my goal with the hardcover was like, I want this to be as close to a special edition as possible without being an actual special edition. So it's like, here's the book, here's the
uh-huh.
dust jacket, but then you take off the dust jacket, and
You
it's
have the full illustrations. Uh-huh.
the naked hardcover with the
Yeah,
full artwork, which also
it
gave me a chance,
looks so good,
gave me
so
a
good.
chance to highlight my artist's artwork in all its
Yeah,
glory,
yeah,
essentially.
yeah, yeah,
So there are just so many different choices that you can make. And I think, especially now when people they're voting with their dollars, and
yeah.
if you feel like my book is worth investing in, the story is one part of it, and not everyone's going to vibe with the story, but at the very least, if you can make the packaging as enticing as possible, people will buy your book and they'll think like, oh man, this was so worth it, and I'm so happy that I did that. And that honestly, like, that sets the tone for their experience with your book from before they even open it and read the first page. There's already a positive experience going on with
And
the
make
reader.
no mistake, the paperback doesn't look cheap.
No, the
That's
paperback
beautiful. Of course, the hardcover is on another level, but if you can churn out the money, because you can't, the paperback is good. It looks really good. I know there is a anniversary edition now that has more illustration if compared with this
so
one.
basically the artwork that is in, so this is like the original edition. So it's like, that's like you open the front cover and then that's the first page, and then all throughout there's just different artwork and mold and mushrooms and stuff like that. What I did for the anniversary edition is a friend of mine, I commissioned him to do a bunch of art pieces. He's an artist in Romania named Robert Trodia. I'm definitely pronouncing that wrong because I don't speak Romanian, but I'm sorry. So I commissioned him to do 6 pieces for the book, and they're all original and they're all about the world, like the city of Neokonoko with the giant mother mushroom, different scenes in the book and different locations and things that I think would be really evocative for the reader. So the new edition has it replaces a lot of the graphics that I had in the original version with that new artwork. My friend Michael has been hanging out here, but he's gonna check out. But thanks for watching, and thank you everyone else for joining us. I really appreciate it.
We were so engrossed geeking out. I know.
You got us talking about formatting, and we were just all in it.
I'm so sorry.
So Robert did all these original art pieces. You can see them on my website. It's just like adrianmgibson.com/extras, and you can see the full color versions of the artwork there. And so in the hardcover and paperback, they're black and white. And in the ebook, they're the full color digital versions. And then on top of that, I got a foreword from my friend Nicholas Eames, author of Kings of the Wild, who did the foreword for the Italian edition of Mushroom Blues that just came out a couple weeks ago.
I've seen
and then I decided, like, man, I've got this beautiful artwork. I've got this foreword from my friend. I'm just going to put these into a new edition of the book. So all the new editions have that foreword, and then they have the original artwork on top of everything else that was already in the book.
That's incredible. Let me shout out a little bit of the people who were waiting here to have some kind of feedback from us.
Hello, everyone.
Sarah Beth, author adjacent. If you haven't watched this YouTube channel, which is quite fresh, you have to check it out, because
go check out Michael.
Really good.
Yeah,
and the interviews too. He's a great guy. He has a beautiful voice. I'm so envious of him.
Michael's a good friend of mine, so I'm actually helping him out with the design for his debut novel. So.
Oh, come on! I didn't know anything about it. Oh, come on, Michael. That's really bad. I want to know something about it. If you don't tell anything about
DM him, man.
About that, Michael, I will force Adrian to spoil the book. So come on, okay?
I beta read it, so I know everything that happens.
Oh, come on. I don't think I can pass over this. It's too much. This is comments about writing, about the soundtrack, and then Martin about the formatting.
Formatting in Word is the worst. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate you feeling our pain. We share this pain together.
You can have a good result with that too if you can use it properly, but it's
but most don't. Most people don't use it properly.
Yeah. I think that it's always the same old story. The tools don't make the result. You have to be able to use them properly. Okay, Kings of the Wild is outstanding, absolutely. So before we've been talking half an hour.
Dude, honestly,
everything aside.
No one else that I've ever chatted with who I like know is into graphic design and formatting and stuff like that. I've been waiting for this, man.
Oh, come on,
waiting for it.
Yeah, it's the perfect storm.
Yes.
Because we love cyberpunk, we love science fiction, we love storytelling in general. I've been doing graphic design until a couple of years ago, I told I've been doing graphic design for 20 years. No, it's more because I'm getting old. It's almost 26 years now. And I
Wow.
remember when Photoshop and when we had Illustrator and when we have all the suite from
Adobe.
another it was not Adobe. It was another big company that then slowly faded out. That they were doing design and using curves and
Okay.
maths and formulas. When many websites they were working with Flash, they
Yeah.
were using all of those animation with Flash, and if you were not able to produce Flash, you were not able to do graphic design for
Hmm.
websites. So I'm really, really old, okay? But to the point that newer versions of Photoshop and of GIMP, I don't really like them. So use the old one because I feel more comfortable with them. That's why I say it's not so much
Yeah.
the
The
tool.
tools.
It's
Hmm.
the mind. You can do very good things with crappy PCs and very
Hmm.
cheap.
Yeah. Even like a
You have
version
to
of
be deliberate with
of
that.
Photoshop from 10 years ago, you can do amazing things with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been using GIMP for the last 6 years. I stopped using Photoshop when that was at first because my PC was too slow and it wasn't able to stomach the new
Mm.
version of Photoshop. So I had to search something else. But then I found myself it was so good. Okay, so I have another comment here about the
Martin's
background
background is
and
in
VFX
VFX for
for
TV.
TV. Yeah, After
Amazing.
Effects. Yeah, absolutely. And I have learned a little bit of video editing now to do all of those small book trailers that I have
Yeah.
on my Instagram and all the rest. Many, many different tools to do a little bit of animations.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's do something about the storytelling.
We're getting real nerdy here.
We have to devote something about this specifically, Adrian. We have to do something about graphic designs for books on a video format. We have to have some kind of specific discussion about this
Yeah.
aside. We have to take time.
Like sort of like a 101 style class for people
Mm-hmm.
that we can
Mm-hmm.
just point to and be like, if you don't know like what the hell you're doing when it comes to your book cover, your
A
interior
mini
design, like go check this
masterclass
out.
about this.
Yeah, man.
Some kind of discussion for that. Okay, let's put a pin on that.
Yeah.
Let's-
I like it. Let's do it.
okay, so stats on my YouTube channel says that 70% of the people following my channel are not subscribers. So there's a slight chance that they don't know absolutely nothing about you. So let's tell me something about you as a reader before we talk about your book specifically, because I think that the media that we consume as
Hmm.
readers, movies and TV show, they influence. Like those memes that they say my lore started with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everything that influenced you as a lover of storytelling, and I think I know something about it a little bit. But the stage is yours. Tell us something
Yeah.
about how did you become crazy and decided that you want to be a writer then.
Yeah. I mean, it's been like a lifelong thing on the reading front.
Mhm.
Like my grandma taught me to read when I was very, very young. To the point where it's like I don't even remember what my first book was. And from there, it was kind of just like I just kept devouring books while I was in school. And in North America, we have this thing called the Scholastic Book Fair. Like, if there are any North Americans here, they know exactly what that means. But it's basically just like the publisher Scholastic.
Mhm.
They have people come to your school and be in the library, and they give you like a catalog of all the books that you could choose from, and you can order the books, and then they get delivered to your classroom and all this kind of
Wow.
stuff. And so it's really, really cool. My librarian was awesome when I was growing up too. She was really encouraging about reading in different genres. Like, I read all kinds of different stuff. I really loved this series called Captain Underpants when I was younger, and that was like recognizably like my first foray into science fiction. So it was like that in science fiction, and it's really goofy science fiction. It's satirical, and it's almost like a comic book. It
Uh-huh.
pretty much is a comic book. But I adored that series, and then I was kind of like dabbling in The Hobbit and the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. on like the fantasy side of things. And then Redwall was one of like my deep loves. It's a basically it's like anthropomorphic animals. You know, like the main characters are always mice and the heroes are always mice, but then there's like badgers and there's rats and rabbits and different kinds of mammals in this fantasy world. And I was like, I love that series so much. I read every single book. And as I got older, it's just like it just kept going. I kept reading and I kept dabbling in different things, and I started incorporating anime, and like I love Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon and different stuff when I was growing up. And then video games, like I played a lot of video games and read comics. And so it's just this whole swath of different media across different mediums. Like I'm very much a multimedia kid in the ways in which I consumed stuff growing up. And I never consciously thought at that point, like, this is science fiction or this is fantasy. Okay, like I had no conception of genre at that point. It wasn't until I started getting into high school and into university that I realized, like, oh, okay, like these genres are actually a thing. And so much of what I've been consuming falls within science fiction, fantasy, horror, what have you. And when I was growing up, I was also really like, I loved comics, but like I'm an artist. I also like writing. And so I did a lot of basically like fan comics of different stuff that I loved. So I didn't do fan fiction. I did fan comics. And like my parents still have like 9 or 10 binders full of comic pages that I
superheroes.
Like different stuff, like superheroes, TV shows that I was watching, like Dragon Ball Z fan comics, Pokemon fan comics, all this different kind of
people,
stuff.
We go through that journey. It's all the same journey. You know?
It's amazing though, yeah. And I drew it all on lined paper, like just didn't even go for blank pages or anything. So I was really, really, into it when I was growing up. And I think university kind of changed my relationship with literature in the sense that I did a degree in English lit. And it showed me a lot about the foundations of literature within the Western canon, which I appreciate. But it wasn't until my fourth year, with my final year of my undergrad, where I did a class on post-apocalyptic landscapes. Mm-hmm. And that was a combination of films and comics and books. So it's like we watched Apocalypse Now, we watched The Matrix, we read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and then Blade Runner. So it was very, again, like tapping into my multimedia childhood. But it rejuvenated my love for science fiction because I kind of dipped out of it for a while, especially when I was in university. And then once that happened, I moved to Berlin later that year. And when I was in Berlin, like I had way more free time and I was just exploring my opportunities. And I discovered this amazing bookstore in Berlin that is specifically dedicated to science fiction and fantasy. And I just became a regular there, man. Like I would go there at least like 2 or 3 times a week just to browse the books and everything. And that's where I discovered China Mieville, Jeff Vandermeer, and the people who worked there like started to get a sense of like what my tastes were, and they'd recommend me stuff. And so they really set me on a path where it's like, here's this really weird shit that like I know you're going to be into. And this is the kind of stuff that just kickstarted my imagination and made me realize like my preconceived notions of what fiction had to be, or the ways in which these like strictures of genre would dictate what a story could be. You can throw most of that out the window and you can really experiment with things. And so that was in my early 20s and basically set me on a path to really love consuming more weird science fiction and fantasy. And then as I got older and became a tattoo artist, while I was tattooing, I was also experimenting with illustrating my own worlds and starting to dabble in writing.
That backstory is worth a novel on itself. You're good character material, Someone is going to tell this story one day, because I think it's so engrossing and so cool. You casually, I was a tattoo artist, a couple of years ago. That sounds so badass. Where did you came in contact with your love for cyberpunk? I'm asking this question because I will not call this cyberpunk per se, but
No,
it has
cyberpunk
those
inspired.
aesthetics, okay, the vibes and that moody cyber Japanese aesthetics and a little bit. But if you had to identify a couple of novels or TV show or movies, of course, when we talk about cyberpunk, there is a specific influence that you can point a finger on. What
For
do
me,
you
it
think?
was on one hand it was Blade Runner, and on the other it was Ghost in the Shell.
Okay.
Ghost in the Shell, that was when I was like really getting into anime, and so this was probably in my early teens. But Ghost in the Shell just like completely blew my mind open, just in terms of like what Japanese animation was capable of, but also the ways in which Japanese storytelling differs from storytelling in the West.
Yeah.
And this also applies to like Chinese storytelling and other East Asian countries. But I just loved Ghost in the Shell's combination of aesthetics. Obviously, aesthetics is a huge thing in cyberpunk, and something that I think, to cyberpunk's detriment, has been like clung on to by so many people, and it almost becomes like this pastiche of itself at this point. Because if it's just the aesthetics and not the substance, because cyberpunk, for
It's
me, the good
performative.
cyberpunk,
It's about the
performative.
aesthetics. It's not about the
100%.
themes and the story itself.
Yeah.
Someone said that you had the best book promotion for a novel, when the growth of mushrooms grow out of a book, and that's insane. What is that book? Is it still going? Is it still
I'll send you. No. Last year I grew mushrooms out of a copy of my book. So there's a video on the Fanfiatic YouTube channel, and you can link to it below.
Absolutely.
I'll send you the link to it. But yeah, basically you can watch like a time lapse of like mushrooms like sprouting out of my book, and then at the end of it, I ate it.
Oh, come on. It's like an art performance,
Yeah.
I eat the mushroom that it's been growing on the book that I created.
Yeah, man. I'm eating my own words.
That's incredible. Really nice.
But Ghost in the Shell in particular really opened my eyes to the ways in which cyberpunk addresses certain themes about the human experience and about society and technology and these different things. And Ghost in the Shell was really cool in the ways in which it dealt with consciousness and the perceptions of like what is human versus what is not. And so from my perspective, I just hadn't experienced anything like that. I think cognitively visceral at that point in my life. Yeah. And then I realized that there's like a whole other genre of this stuff. There are books, there are video games. Like I really love the Deus Ex video games as well, and the ways in which they talk about corporations and consumer culture and the ways in which technology interacts with human beings. So like blurring the lines between the biological and the technological, it for me is really fascinating. And then Blade Runner as well, dealing with a lot of those same themes, but with the combination of like an absolutely incredible cast, like the soundtrack by Vangelis. I mean, like speaking of Italians, like that soundtrack is just gorgeous. I love it so much. So these were really kind of foundational for me in terms of like my love for cyberpunk, and I just adore the ways in which the genre blends really evocative aesthetics with really powerful subtext in terms of its themes and its conversations with the reader or the viewer about what it means to be human, what it means to interact with technology. And obviously you go back and like a lot of the cyberpunk is really like, I doubt there's anyone watching right now who'd be like, oh, I'd love to just like shove some technology into my body. people are a little bit more skeptical about, I guess, like the transhumanist augmentation side of things, but everything else, like the pervasiveness of technology and the ways in which our phones are so closely tied to our senses of self, and they're just extensions of us. And so I think the ways in which technology has actually advanced versus the way it's portrayed in things like cyberpunk it's very similar concerns and very similar conversations, but the ways in which it has panned out has been much, much different, and I think much more subtle and
Exactly. That's what I was about to
less,
say.
yeah, just less obvious, because
Mhm.
people don't understand, like, yeah, you're not technically like shoving a piece of technology under your skin and it lives inside you, or you're not like injecting nanobots into your veins or anything like that. But this phone, these
You're
smartphones,
equally
these
dependent
devices,
on that.
yep,
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. Yeah.
I had I came to cyberpunk and a different idea of science fiction in general much later for me,
Hmm.
because I had cycles in my life. I started with epic fantasy, then I read a lot of classic science fiction like
Mm.
Asimov and Heinlein, and then Van Vogt, the golden age of science fiction. And I
Yep.
distinctly remember that my older brother, which was he was the one who introduced me to SFF in general. And there was a magazine that he got, I think twice, every 2 months.
Hmm.
And when cyberpunk sparked in existence in the US, and then after a couple of years in Italy too, the people writing about science fiction on magazine and on newspapers, they were looking at cyberpunk like that, like, what is this? And why is it so successful? Why are people
Hmm.
so in love with that kind of aesthetics? And I was reading essays about cyberpunk even before actually understanding what was there. I distinctly remember that my brother said to me, "You're too young. You can read that. Okay, it's not for you." At that point, I was around 15 years old or 16.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was completely right.
I mean,
And
like trying to read Neuromancer at 15, it's like, forget it.
exactly, I'm getting there. And at that point, of course, we didn't have, we had Blade Runner, but I wasn't old enough to watch it because my
Hmm.
parents wouldn't allow it. And we didn't have still, we were around the time when Ghost in the Shell was being released in the US. So my first contact with cyberpunk, or with a different kind of science fiction, which were more interested in themes, something that were so far away from the classic space opera, the bombastic ideas
Hmm.
of the 50s, was what I had a little bit of an allowance to buy comics,
Okay.
and I went to a library. It wasn't actually a library; it was a kiosk. They were sending newspapers and all the rest, and they had a mass market paperback of Virtual Light
Oh,
by
cool.
William Gibson.
Yeah, yeah.
I was
That's
comparing the
actually,
price.
that's way more approachable than Neuromancer.
Yeah, I understand, but it wasn't something suitable for a 15 years old,
No, no, no,
especially
definitely
for a
not.
naive Sicilian guy who knew absolutely nothing about that. And I was comparing the price of that and of the usual comic books that I was reading at the time. And I said, this thing is 500 pages long. It costs the same. It will have
Hmm.
much more story inside than the usual comic book that I will read in half an hour. And I bought that. And I read it in a couple of days, and it completely blew my mind. And I'm still scared of the nightmares that it got me, because there were a couple of scenes that were absolutely gruesome in that one too. And then came Blade Runner, and then came Ghost in the Shell.
Hmm.
That I still think that
Martin
could
just
be.
mentioned Snow Crash in the chat.
I
That's
haven't
the
read
fifth
that, but
rendition.
I'll absolutely do it one day. And I still think that Ghost in the Shell, the first one, I think that in a sense it's a good movie too, but the
Hmm.
first one is still unparalleled. The
Yeah, I
animation,
agree.
and the voices, and the music, and the aesthetics, and the story. I understood very little of it when I saw it the first time, but I still think about it to this day. I think a couple of twice a week, I still think to Motoko and what
It's
we
like
went
your
through.
version of the Roman Empire. How
Yeah,
often do you think
something
about
like
Ghost in the
that.
Shell?
Something like that. That one, and most recently, I think that I like a little bit more Blade Runner, the sequel,
2049.
compared to the first one,
Yeah.
because it's a little bit moodier, and I am a somber guy, and when I think about
Yeah.
it, it resonated with me a little bit more. And and Dunes, the new
Yeah.
Dunes, I think about Dunes every day, because
Yeah. So you're thinking about that director, like Denis Villeneuve.
yeah,
That's like
yeah. I
but
have something.
he's a
I have
master.
a thing for that guy. Yeah,
But honestly,
absolutely.
from my perspective, him and his, I can't remember the name of his cinematographer that he works with, but they have like
Okay,
the
the one
combination
that
of those
Blade
are,
Runner is not the same that did Dune. I'm not sure
yes,
if
yeah,
it's
it's the
Dickens.
same
Is
guy.
Dickens? Okay,
So that combination of that director and that cinematographer is just
it's
absolute
pure
pure gold.
magic.
But Blade Runner 2049 was a huge inspiration from like I would say like an atmosphere and an aesthetic point of view, like mood for Mushroom Blues. Like I was thinking so much about that movie when I was
And I
writing
can tell by
this
reading
book.
the book. We are right there.
Yeah, because
Do
it's
you
like,
want to give us a little bit of an elevator pitch for your book
sure,
for all
we're
people
45 minutes in. I'll give an elevator pitch
Yeah,
for
yeah,
it.
I'm sorry, but my
It's all good.
audience, they know that I have no ability to synthesize anything, just to be brief. I'm not able to be brief about anything. And if you
It's all
give me
good, buddy.
someone who has on the same line with me, I'll be babbling for 2 hours without talking about absolutely nothing. So let's give us an elevator pitch for this beautiful book.
Okay, so Mushroom Blues is book one in the Hoffman Report series. It's also the first book in the Fungal Verse, which is my shared universe. We can touch on that a little bit later as well. But the story, it's a murder mystery, police procedural with science fiction and fantasy elements. It blends all of these together with mushrooms, just lots and lots of mushrooms. But the book starts off with Henrietta Hoffman. She's a homicide detective. She's human, and she's in a city. It's a city, the capital city of Hapon, which is a country of fungal people. So they're people that are human-like, but with mushrooms growing out of them, with fungal abilities and all kinds of crazy stuff. And so she starts the book on a beach. There's a dead child, and she's ordered to investigate the murder of this child, and that sends her across the city of Neokonoko. And she's forced to partner up with a fungal named Koji Nameko, who's the only fungal person on the police force. And so the two of them go around Neokonoko and investigate this murder and figure out like, why is this happening, and start to unravel this conspiracy. And for Henrietta, it's a very difficult journey. She's not a likable character, as Evel was telling me before. I know it was very intentional. She's racist towards the fungal people. She's mycophobic, so she doesn't like mushrooms. She's disgusted by them. And so the entire book, she is confronted by her relationship with fungi and the fungal people, and her racism and discrimination. And so Koji and this investigation are kind of like catalysts for her to go through this experience of awakening, essentially. So a lot of it is Henrietta's story, but all of it is centered around the murder mystery of this fungal child. And if you love police procedurals, like it'll hit all the beats that you love. So.
And it is also a story that works on many different levels. Oh, Martin was saying that Greg Fraser was director of photography for which one? Yeah, maybe for Dune. Yeah, maybe for Dune. And Roger and Dickens for Blade Runner.
Blade Runner.
Okay. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Martin.
And it worked for me. It is working. I haven't finished the book because it has so many themes interwoven organically and in a very elegant way, because there are themes of colonization and the aftermath of war, of culture trying. There is a portion of those culture that are actually trying to work together, others that are forced to coexist, and they're constantly on the brink of another war. And there is the internal struggle. If you're plot-driven readers, you'll have an interesting plot with an interesting mystery here, and many intriguing questions that you and answers. Most of that, they have a nice. You were able to have a nice spacing on question and answers in the book. But what I really enjoyed is that I'm a character-driven reader. If I love characters, you can give me 1,000 pages of characters sitting around the table and speaking, okay? Because I will enjoy that kind of interaction. And even if she's that unlikable at the beginning. You kind of understand when she's coming from, and you understand through the language and through the way she reacts to the others,
Mhm.
what drives her, what she fears, and what she wants. That's the kind of character that is in a position where she really doesn't want anything else. She should just want to chill in a way, but she
She
also
just
has
wants to drink a cup of coffee. She's like,
yeah, so she's in a position where you can actually relate to that kind of being of tiredness, of being completely fed up with the universe, with the entire
Mhm.
universe, but also having that kind of um, sense of justice that has to deal with the many shades of grays
Yeah.
of the universe and the world, and in the specific position of authority that she has in that relationship with the other cop, which comes from that from the people, from the Japanese people.
Mhm.
And there are a couple of sentences that I want to highlight,
Okay.
especially at the beginning. One that I think will stay with me for for quite a bit. That says she's talking about her past, the
Mhm.
protagonist. She says that time stops for no one. Not if you were a drunken wreck, not if you had your shit together. Time will just float on, and if you were too stupid or naive or careless to pay attention, you'd inch closer to the end without even realizing it. And it's in a they're pretty prose. It's beautiful. It sounds
Thank you.
really well. So kudos for that. But I think that encompasses a little bit of her internal struggle, but
Yeah.
also what's happening all around her.
Mhm.
Of those two civilizations, the one invading the place and the one who's trying to readapt to this invasion. There's a moment when they have to, during the investigation, they have to deal with a destroyed bridge that has a
Yeah.
specific meaning on a spiritual, almost, and religious level. And when she crosses to a specific place, she basically breathes particles in the air. And then because the fungal people, they have a specific connection. There's a nice sentence here that says, the connection that my people have is deeper that any human can perceive. And when he's explained this, he has starry eyes, describing the nice connection that the
Mhm.
fungal people have. They have this mycelium connection with themselves. They feel emotions with the
Yeah.
others. They have this
So it's like
connection.
this is probably like the most cyberpunk element of the book. Even though it's not cyberpunk, which is
But it's
why I kind of
organic, okay?
I
Yeah.
jokingly call this like fungal punk, but it's like it's stuck. Where the fungal people have what is called the fungal net, and this is like their mycelial network and the ways in which they're able to connect with each other. And for me, this is very much playing on cyberpunk themes of communication and relationships, where what happens to relationships, what happens to society, what happens to community when you have something like brain-to-brain communication.
Mhm.
When you're able to communicate with people in ways that are imperceptible to us right now as human beings.
Mhm.
And so it's like someone 100 years ago, and you try to explain to them what we're able to do. Like right now, we're recording across the world, or
Yeah,
on your phone, we're
exactly.
able to message
Try to
someone.
explain them Bluetooth
Right.
or Wi-Fi.
Exactly. Yeah. So this fungal net was kind of my way of exploring communication through the lens of something like cyberpunk, but specifically in a biological way, through the fungal people having this biological connection to one another, and they're able to perceive each other. They're able to emote to one another. They're also able to block themselves off, sort of
Mhm.
like you'd like mute someone on social media, kind of thing. But I'm really glad that you picked up the what Henrietta was saying, and how her experience is kind of a reflection of what's going on in the broader context of the city and the cultures and stuff. And it's like um, I purposefully made her character very narcissistic, and that plays into the story later on, like as the series
Yeah.
progresses, and you start to get other POV characters perceiving her from the outside, and people from her past returning into her life, where you start to see like, here's this person who's done horrible things in her past.
Mhm.
One of the main parts of Henrietta's journey is something that's revealed in chapter 1, but I'm not going to spoil it. Where she's constant, like she cannot let it go. She feels so much guilt for it, and it has become
troubled past.
Yeah, it has cemented itself in her consciousness and her her sense of self. And so
even that concept about the connection they have, that sentence that I mentioned a little bit before, when Koji, which is the other cop, the fungal guy, when he explains this, he's really proud of it. He's kind of mansplaining his way through telling her, even he's not especially misogynistic, he's a pretty decent guy. But when he's telling her about that, he's explaining this exotic and beautiful thing that they have. But she experienced it in another way. I will not spoil how, but her first contact with that kind of network is pretty shocking for her.
Yeah.
And in a way, it reflects this huge void that separates these two cultures. They look a little bit American, but they look also a little bit Chinese in the way.
Well, the Japanese are very much inspired by Japan and East Asian cultures, and the Caprinians, which are the humans who've colonized. So it's like, the colonizers colonizing the fungal colonizers. They're based on more or less like Imperial Britain, Imperial America. But I very much give them like a British kind of intonation, especially in the way that they speak and whatnot. And if anyone listens to the audiobook, my narrator is British, and she gives that vibe as well. But there's definitely, like, I wanted to show the layers of how culture is perceived by different people, and you can definitely see it, like, especially these days, where I think the internet has amplified certain arguments and certain divides between cultures. On one hand, you can learn so much about a different culture, or you can travel there and you can experience it for yourself. But on the other hand, there are so many more means through which perceptions of these other cultures can be misconstrued or can be warped and twisted into something that is judgmental, discriminatory, racist. Like when we were all going through COVID as a planet, there was so much twisting of the narrative to and basically create an antagonistic perception of Asian people. And those kinds of narrative warpings for me were really important in the context of this story and this world, and the relationship between the Japanese people and the Caprinian humans, and the ways in which, like Henrietta herself is narcissistic, but is also narcissistic for her country to invade. And we don't know why exactly in book 1. Like, it'll become clear as the series goes on, like, why the humans invaded the fungal nation. There's like this hubris in it. There's this narcissistic hubris on like a governmental level, on a societal level, for why they would invade this other country, even though there are other countries around this world, this secondary world. There are other humans who speak other languages in other countries, but for some reason, the humans in Caprinia, through their sense of pride and hubris, decided that they were going to invade Hapan. They were going to basically dominate the fungal people and take everything from them. And so there is this like overarching conversation of hubris and pride, and how narcissism can exist on like a individual level in the case of Henrietta, but also how narcissism can exist on a cultural level.
There's also a lot of systemic ignorance, I think, because
exactly, or like also like cultural brainwashing. Like, it's ignorance through
it's not like the Japanese people are saints, but they're paying the consequences of what happens, basically.
Yes, exactly.
And by reading it, even if I haven't finished, and by seeing all of these layers, the way you were able to organically interwoven themes and in the mechanics of the dialogues and the descriptions, the creation of the secondary worlds, and also the world. There's a lot of added language there that sounds Japanese, but it's original. I can definitely tell this was a serious contender to the SPF BO10. Now, how does it feel to be number 2?
Don't rub it in my face, dude.
If you don't know, the SPF box, the spiff box,
they called it spiff box jokingly, but like the
is
10th
competition
iteration of
for
it.
independently published authors for fantasy, basically. And I didn't have the pleasure to be a judge for this one, but if they assigned me this book, I would have to recuse myself because I've been in contact with Adrian.
Yeah.
But it landed in many capable hands, and Adrian was so close to winning this year. Actually, you had the same result,
the same final score, and we had to do a tiebreaker.
J.L. Odom from Blood and Salt and Blood.
By Blood by Salt.
By Blood by Salt.
Yeah.
And would you kindly explain why didn't you win this competition? What happened? The mechanics of you being number 2? Please explain.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I'll say this just as like a blanket statement before I delve into the intricacies of it. I'm really happy that I made it to second place, and it's kind of like 1.5, like because we did tie for first score, like top score. But it's just honestly like a matter of the workings of the competition. It's basically like you have 10 finalists and you have 10 review teams, and these 10 finalists exist within like a pool of 300. So there are 300 books that got accepted into the competition. There was like a lottery system last year. To sign up, basically it's like everyone who wanted to sign up signed up, and I think there were like close to 600, but only 300 books can be in the competition, so it's just a luck of the draw.
There's only so much judge that can be involved.
yeah I mean, there's a lot of reading involved for the judge teams, but so the 10 finalists, we basically got selected from like September through December, and then from then on it was basically until April. All the teams had until the end of April to review each of those 10 books. So 10 finalists and 10 teams, resulting in 100 reviews. So, I mean, just like I kind of equate it to like, students in high school or university who are just procrastinating until the very end to like study for their exam or to write their essay or what have you. I think it was like the last 3 weeks of the competition were hell, just like completely anxiety inducing for myself and for the other finalists. I think within the last week of the competition, at least a third of the reviews came in during that last week. So we were all just like pulling our hair, not really knowing what was going to happen, because the scoreboard is like the average of all your reviews is what determines your ranking in the top 10. And so it's just like books are moving up and down all over the place. My book was more or less like at the top for most of the competition. And by the end, it was basically 2 days until the competition's ending. 2 reviews left with me and JL's by Blood by Salt. We were tied for our average at that point, and there was one reviewer with 2 reviews left, one for each of us. And so basically that one reviewer had like had our fates in their hands. And what ended up happening is she reviewed our books the exact same score. So our average was still the same. We were both like the number 1 spot, tied for 1. And Mark Lawrence and the other review teams basically had to figure out like, how do we do a tiebreaker? And so what they ended up doing is, because my book was like a top pick for 2 blogs versus JL's 4. She was the top pick for four different blogs. That was kind of like what they used to determine the tiebreaker. And so it ended up going to her, which I'm super proud of her, and she's amazing. We had a call when all of this came in, and it was just like we both couldn't believe it, because it was so stressful. But then finally, like, we were able to let all this stress out and just be happy.
That this year, the average quality was really strong. I've been
the average quality of
SPF for many years, even before being a sub judge like this year. But even the 6 books that were assigned to me, they were really strong, and I had a really hard time picking
Mhm.
my winner, let's say. And so I can understand the stress for all the judges.
Yep.
And it's a nice stress because you enjoy reading so many good books. At the end of
Mhm.
the day, it's really difficult to cherry pick one. It's like being a
Yeah, it is
judge in
tricky.
a model context. Here, you're all beautiful girls. How can I tell you that one is more beautiful than the others?
Right, right.
And smarter because it's about books. But yeah, this year was really blessed, and I haven't read by Blood by Salt by Blood. I'll never be able to tell it right, but I'm planning to do it, and I think that people should really keep a close eye to the SPFBO
Yeah,
because every year it gives us a chance to see books that otherwise will be very difficult to discover
I
because
agree.
it is so difficult to market and to find an audience. And I am seeing it myself by being in this market. I'm very lucky because I have a platform. I have this small booktube channel, and I've been surrounded by very generous people that help me
Mhm.
spreading the word about the book. And I don't even want to imagine how my career will be without that kind of support.
Me too.
So if you want to give a try to something a little bit different, go and try the SPF Biox. And we have, I think that on Mark's blog, you have the result for each and every year for
Yep.
all the
Yeah, you
finalists.
can I mean, I think his like I think he still has a blog spot. Um kind of like joke with Mark, just like, dude, change your website, please.
Come on.
But regardless, just search Mark Lawrence SPFBO and
And
it'll be
then
the
I
first
think
page that pops up. But
Zach Argyle had I don't know if he had it for this year but absolutely for a couple of years he had all the
the Indie
various
Fantasy Fund.
stages.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. On Zach Argyle's website,
Zach Argyle, yeah,
he has all the finalists and all the
yeah,
final scores
yeah,
over there. So basically, he has like a tracker, like an
exactly.
SPFBO tracker
That's
over on his
really
website.
interesting.
Yeah,
Okay, so
but
if
but honestly,
you
like SPFBO, I'll just say like from the point of view of like a debut author,
Mhm.
like I put a lot into my marketing, a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of thought into how my book is marketed. And there are different things that I've seen that have accelerated the
Yeah,
visibility of my book and the sales of my book and everything like that. Like BookTube and Instagram have been big. So like different people on, you know, like Daniel Green or Captured in Words, Jay
yeah,
Kennedy was a judge for SPFBO, but anytime he covered SPFBO stuff, then that was a really good boost for all the authors involved. So it's like I will say, if you're thinking of signing up for SPFBO, do it because it's free. Why
just do
wouldn't
it.
you?
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, I will say, don't expect it to give you everything that you want it to,
Mhm.
because even if you make it to the finals, even if you make it to like top 3 or whatever, there still has to be conscious effort on your part in order to take advantage of what is given to you. So
Mhm.
yes, SPFBO can boost your book in a lot of ways because there is more coverage of your book, but
Absolutely.
you can also go above and beyond that and utilize the visibility of this competition to
Yeah.
continue to boost your book and to leverage it and get your book into different people's hands, basically. So it's not just like a catch-all like my book's going to blow up if I make it into SPFBO finals or something
No,
like
no,
that. No.
absolutely.
So
I think that's a nice
you have to be
segue
a little bit more conscious about it. Yeah.
to ask you the last question because, like a psychiatrist, our time is almost done, and it's been so nice, especially because I had the pleasure to geek out about graphics, and we have to do more about that
Yes,
because
I
people
agree.
need us. We are heroes about
Yes.
it. But there's one question that I love to ask to my interviewees here, and it's about what's the hardest lesson that you have learned by being in the industry with your own books, being on the other side. What do you
Mm.
think?
I think balance, because the biggest struggle that I've had since I released Mushroom Blues was I put so much time and I put so much effort into marketing the book and just pushing it. And I see the results of it now, but all of that came at the detriment of my actual creative process and my sense of sort of self-worth and capability when it comes to creative writing and actually the act of writing. So as a result of everything that I've done for Mushroom Blues, which has been very beneficial, and I'm so glad I did it, it also came at the detriment of my actual writing, which is why I've still been like, I still haven't released anything new, and I'm still kind of like working my way through and trying to figure out like, okay, how do I do this in a healthier way? Just on the basis of like, you know, I'm very much an obsessive creative. So if I go into a project, like I go
You
deep.
don't
And
say. We have
you
no
don't
idea.
say. So Mushroom Blues, it consumed me. Like it consumed me in so many different ways. And as a result, like I wasn't, I wasn't the best husband I could be. I wasn't the best dad that I could be. And since Mushroom Blues is released, and since I've started to like learn these lessons and really incorporate them, like I feel much more connected with my family. I feel much more connected with my wife and with myself. And so for me going forward, a lot of it is about how do I keep this writing thing going in such a way where I don't feel it's taking away from my ability to be a more balanced person and to be a more present father and a more present husband or more present friend. And so a lot of it is just figuring out like finding the right time to write, not being completely dogmatic about like word counts and all this different kind of stuff. It's like if I can chip away at things day by day and not necessarily feel like, oh, I have to reach like 2,500 words today, blah blah blah. Those are the kinds of things that end up feeding back into my brain and telling me like, you're not doing good enough. And that's when I start to become more and more obsessive about something, because it's like, I'm not good enough. Like, let me show you that I am good enough about this. So I'm learning a lot about myself and figuring out ways to better balance my craft and marketing with my personal life and my personal responsibilities, not just to my kids and my wife or my friends, but also to myself and my health
Exactly.
and whatnot. So I'd
These are
say,
wise words. And I think
yeah,
that each and every one of us, if we deal with any kind of artistic inclination, it can be writing, it can be drawing, it can be music, we're dealing with a monster,
mm-hmm.
and that monster can consume us,
Yeah.
or we can tame it. It depends.
Yeah.
It takes time, it takes experience, a lot of messing up and trying to fix it, but it can be done. And Adrian, this was incredible. Thank you so much. I hope I had much more time. And please, let's try to do it again faster.
Yeah,
Let's not allow ourselves to spend another year and a half without being in contact. If you haven't read Mushroom Blues, this is the cover for the paperback. This is out in ebook, paperback, hardcover, and audiobooks.
Yeah.
And try to give it a try. Let me know what you think about it. You'll have a review pretty soon, because I will consume it pretty fast, even
Thanks,
if I'm
buddy.
a slow reader, because and expect a really long and extensive reviews. The one that I published a couple of days ago was 25 minutes long. Gosh,
wow, dude.
I have to try to be a little bit shorter. But that's my shtick. That's the branding
man.
that I have. Yeah. Okay. Thank you again for being here. Thank you everyone who showed up in the chat, everyone who will watch this replay on YouTube. I hope to see you soon. And if you want to support the channel, you can check out my own novel, The Crimson Fire. And I'll hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye, Adrian. See you all.
Thank you.